Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast. I have one of my favorite homeschool people in all the world on with me today. She has been on the podcast before, so you may have heard her in the past. If not, you are in for a treat. Her name is Danielle Papageorgiou. Isn't that a fun name to say? That's why I'm friends with you, Danielle, because your name is just fun to say.
In high
Papageorgiou.
school, in high school, every girl wanted to marry my husband because they just wanted his last name.
Probably not the best reason to
Probably
find a
not.
husband,
Yeah,
but
probably not.
you lucked out. God blessed you, and
Yes.
you ended up with a really good guy. So, and you have a really great
Yes.
family. We love you
Yeah.
guys. So
We,
tell us
we
really
love
quickly
them.
about your family.
Okay, so I have my husband, John. We've been married for 20 years now, which I can't believe. And my oldest is 18, Connor. And then I have a girl who is almost 16, and then a little boy who is just a crazy whirlwind, and he is 8.
So
So
fun.
that's
And
us.
yeah, and you've been homeschooling for how many years?
Well, I say right from the beginning because I think birth is day one of homeschooling because we're always teaching our kids,
That's right.
right from the womb and before I can't talk tonight. Before the womb, people read to their kids in the womb. So, I mean, I say 18 years.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you've done a great job of it. And it's always fun to be
Oh,
able
thank you.
to talk to moms who are really committed to discipling the hearts of their children and just pouring into them. And we met you a couple of years ago when we attended your life schooling conference. And that was a new
Hmm.
term to us. Though it was something that we really had done as a family. We just didn't actually have a name for what we were doing.
Right.
You, right. And so you've got this conference, it's called the Life Schooling Conference.
Hmm.
And your whole ministry really is about how we incorporate schooling into life and life into schooling. And it's all about bringing it together and making it just
Right.
kind of one great big part of our family because
Right.
it's not separate. It's not like sending our kids to
Exactly.
school. So talk to us
Exactly.
about life schooling a little bit. And then I actually want to get
Hmm.
into talking a little bit about some unforeseen circumstances that might come into our homeschool because I know you've dealt with some of those things. We've dealt with some of those things. And so I
Yeah.
want to bring some encouragement to families who maybe things just aren't going smoothly and their
Yeah.
whole world is getting shaken up and they're not exactly sure what to do. So first let's talk about the life schooling thing.
Right. So, it's funny that you say, you just didn't have that term for it because I hear that a lot. People are like, oh, well, I guess we've been life schoolers. And that was really my heart is just to kind of, I guess, rebrand the idea of homeschooling because I feel like over the years it's really become more and more schooly. And certainly you've always had that element because we do what we know. And so that's all people have known. They grew up going to school and having the different grade levels and everything sort of segmented like that. And but it's really not the best way, in my opinion. You really have to integrate all of education. I really think there's a biblical basis for this because when you look at Deuteronomy, I think it's Deuteronomy 6, and I always mix up if it's 4 or 6. But anyway, you look at the verses there in that passage, which is very familiar to a lot of us as homeschoolers, and it talks about teaching our children as we walk by the way, as we sit, and as we just go through life. And so, if that's good enough for spiritual things, then why not the academics as well? It just should be this life integrated approach. So life schooling, the official definition is the individualized process of discovering your child's God-given gifts and talents that happen primarily within the context of your family's unique situations and missions. That's all about. Our little tagline is merging life with homeschooling, because I really want moms to understand, and dads, that it's okay when things don't go the way you've planned, because typically life doesn't, right? I mean, in all other areas, how often does life go the way we plan it? It just doesn't. And that is because God wants to stretch us. He wants to test our faith. And he wants us really to rely on him and not on our own plans. A man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps, it says in Proverbs. And so we need to be open to the Lord's direction and his leading in our homeschooling. And so that's just really my heart, is to help parents just really relax and understand that all of these circumstances that happen are ordained by God, and he uses them. And we just need to figure out how that learning can integrate with that and how we can just make it all work.
Yes, yes. I love that you have a whole definition for it, which is really cool because you've really thought through this process. And I know that you've really encouraged me along our homeschool journey over the past few years, and that, God really does have a purpose and a plan and has gifted each one of our children in a specific way.
Right.
I look at your family, and you have your kids. You're not one who sits down and we're going to do math from 7 to 7:30, and then we're going to do science from 8 to 8:30, and then we're going to do grammar. And you don't have your homeschool structured like that. But knowing your family and knowing your kids, God has really developed in them some incredible gifts. They're artistic. I mean, your daughter is quite possibly the most amazing artist I've ever known of in my life. I'm just stunned by the things that she's capable of doing. They've written books, they've made movies, they've done all of these things. And what's so cool about your homeschool style and parenting style, and that I think ties in well with what we really try to do with our girls, is trying to direct our kids to using those gifts and talents and abilities in a way that glorifies their creator, because God created them to be able to use those things for his glory, not for ours, but for his glory. And so life schooling allows you to do that. And then there's just the practical side of life schooling as well. That's just life. It's grocery shopping. It's doctor's appointments. It's house cleaning. It's, organization of our home and of our day, and trying to just navigate through this life, because it doesn't really come easy. I mean, some things come easily, but not all of it does. And so what a privilege we have as homeschool parents to be able to come alongside our kids and help them navigate through the murky waters of life, and at the same time be able to depend on the Lord to help them figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, and it's funny because we can kind of think all these things are going to just kind of come naturally to our kids, like how to clean a toilet or, cooking and all of these things, but they don't. And I remember when I got to where I was about to graduate college, and my mom's like, okay, it's time to learn how to cook. And I'm like, I can cook. And I always laugh because my poor husband, when we got married, I didn't know how to cook. I mean, I made chicken, and I'm thinking, well, if you just turn the heat up really high, it'll get done faster. So he cuts into this chicken that's like burned on the outside and it's raw in the middle.
Oh, no.
And he's like, next time, just put it in the trash. I'm like, oh, it was bad. It was bad. And so, all these things are very practical. They're a part of life, and they're just as important, if not, I think sometimes more important than some of the academics that we think our kids have to know. Like they have to take physics and they have to take chemistry in high school. Well, maybe not. I mean, if that's not their gifting, God put into them gifts and things that they're passionate about. And so we need to really let them do that. And all the academics, I think of the verse, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. All. I mean, that's a promise.
Yes.
And so I just believe that as you're seeking God's kingdom and you're teaching your kids to seek God's kingdom and his glory with the gifts that he has put in them, particularly for them, then all these things are going to be added, and all the academics come in so naturally. And, studies have shown that when you when you learn things in this way, they stick much better through this real life, practical type of learning. And so it's just very practical. It just makes things a lot easier, like I said before, when life doesn't go according to the plan.
Yeah.
Because we know that it doesn't.
Yeah, no, it almost never does.
Right.
So,
right.
Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and talk some more about this.
Okay.
We are back with Danielle Papageorgiou, and we are talking about life schooling and how to integrate that into our homeschooling. And so we were talking about God-given gifts and how we can have the opportunity as homeschoolers and as life schoolers to be able to take notice of those things in our kids. I would love to know just how practically you have done that with your children. How have you recognized and discovered those gifts in them? And then how have you gone about fostering those gifts in them in order for them to be able to use those for God's glory?
Well, it's a funny thing because a lot of moms will say that to me, like, how do I find my kids' gifts? Or I don't know what they are. They don't seem to have any gifts, or they just want to play computer games
Right.
all day long. And, I really believe that, first of all, and this might be a bit of a tangent, but get rid of the computer games,
Sure.
or at least, cut them way back. You've got to have limits on that because it really stifles their imagination,
Mm-hmm.
and it really prevents them from being creative and figuring out who it is God created them to be. But besides that, I think it's really a funny thing because they will just sort of come to the surface. There's no real magic formula, as with anything in life, really. There's no magic formula that, okay, step 1, you do this, step 2. And again, it's because it's a faith walk, and the Lord wants us just to trust in Him. And so you just have to pay attention to your kids. And one of the things that I recently created that I really love, I use it myself, is a Who Is This Child journal. And so every day I can write down the little things that I notice, the questions that, right now it's Corbin. He's my youngest. My older two, they've kind of got their path and their direction. But and I see gifts in my youngest one already, but it's been really fun to write down the different questions he'll ask during the day. Or then there's another section for what I call sparks. Mm-hmm. So anything that I notice that really kind of captures his attention, I'll just write that down, and that, this is something that maybe we need to explore a little more. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a lot of fun. In that, at the bottom, I just have a place where you can write a prayer. So every day you just kind of write out this prayer of just, I don't know, just whatever comes to your heart as a mom and as you're watching your child develop. And so it's just been a really fun resource for me to kind of learn more about my son, because I think a lot of it does go back to simple observation. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we're so caught up in the busyness of every day.
Yes.
And checking off the boxes and doing all the things that we have to get done as moms and homeschooling moms and wives. And so we can just kind of forget to pay attention.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's important to be intentional. And I know that's a really popular word, but, sometimes we really do have to just try to be more intentional about that.
Yes.
And it is amazing. I remember my friend Barbara, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, was like, I just don't know, what's going to happen with my kids, and, what direction God's really leading them, or how they're going to use these gifts, what He's going to do with them. And I'm like, Barbara, it's amazing because the Lord will just bring people into your path, and He'll just open these doors that you never would have expected. And then here we are, and her son, Matthew, just finished up a movie, a short film that my kids were involved with.
Yeah.
My son's actually the lead in it. And it was accepted into the Christian Worldview Film Festival as a contestant. And so it's just so cool to see that. And then how the Lord used her daughter's gift of sewing, because she was like, I don't know, how that's going to be used. And so she sewed all the costumes for it. So it's just, when we just trust in him and trust in the process and don't get so worried, because really it's not up to us. Right. I think we carry that weight, and it's so needless, because we're not the homeschool teacher. God is. We're just the teacher's assistant, you know? So we need to just trust that process and trust in him.
Yeah.
Because if we're doing our best, how is he going to be unfaithful to that?
Yeah.
He's a faithful God, and all he asks for is our best. And it's usually very imperfect. I will be the first to tell you, I am the world's worst at scheduling. And, it's always been a struggle for me. And so, but the Lord still works through that somehow, And so it always amazes me to see that.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you do talk about being intentional. And like you said, I know that's a word that we kind of toss around. Yeah. But it really is an issue of being intentional with our kids, and also being flexible in that when they're not fitting into our idea of what we think that they should be, or how we think they should act, or what, what career they want to pursue, whatever that is, it's not up to us. It is what has God called them to do, not what do we want them to do. And so I think, it's one of the great blessings of being a homeschool parent, is that we know our kids better than anyone else knows them. There are teachers all over the world who genuinely love their students. They really do. They most of them don't teach because they make a ton of money. They teach because they love kids and they want to have some kind of influence in their lives. Unfortunately, many of them have a really terrible influence, but there are many who have a fantastic influence and who genuinely love the kids. But when you've got a classroom full of 20, 30, 40 kids, you cannot individually take each one of those children under your wing and nurture their talents and their abilities and their gifts that God has blessed them with, and help them develop those things. And as homeschool parents and as life schooling parents, we have such a great opportunity to do that. And it's not easy. It's not easy. Sometimes it's incredibly inconvenient. When my daughter wants to, take out the glue gun and cardboard boxes and fabric and paints and make a big mess, I'm looking at them like, okay, what are you going to do here? And then she comes up with something amazing and beautiful. She's, my oldest is very artistic, and she loves to paint. She loves to draw, but she also likes to create things. And so she got these boxes for Christmas, and she made for her little sister as a Christmas gift. She made these little kind of, it's hard to explain, but she made doll houses out of them, but they open and close. And so they can travel with them. And it was so cool. And it was just such a special gift that she gave to her sister. And she worked for days and days and weeks actually, on these two portable doll houses. And what a privilege. And so she would go into her little craft area and she would listen to an audiobook and she would make these creations. And what a joy, how fun it was for her to be able to do that. So, Danielle, we are out of time for this part of the podcast, but let's come back on Wednesday and let's talk more, because I want to talk about just how to deal with some of those unforeseen circumstances. We talked about that in the very beginning, and I want to jump on that bandwagon and talk a little bit about that. So thank you guys.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Join us again on Wednesday. And I forgot to say this at the beginning, but Danielle, she is a special part of the Homegrown Generation Family Expo. And so if you have not yet participated in that or signed up for that, you can watch it live, or you'll be able to go back and watch replays of that. So she will be speaking about life schooling for that event. It's going to be awesome. So, all right. Thanks. We'll see you guys back on Wednesday.
Bye.
I just said that, and then I realized this is probably not going to air until after the expo.
Oh, well, do you need to re-record a little snippet or?
I'll do it at the end.
Okay.
So, okay, where are we on time? All right. So let's go another 20 minutes. You good?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked Podcast. I am back again for part 2 with my good friend Danielle Papageorgiou, and we are talking about life schooling and how to integrate school into life and life into school, and how it all just comes together, and how we have the great opportunity as homeschooling parents to be able to be intentional about recognizing our children's gifts and their abilities and their talents, and really developing those things in them. We talked about that in the first half of the podcast on Monday. And today I want to talk about something that not a lot of people really discuss in the homeschool world, but pretty much everybody that I know who homeschools deals with this in one way or another. And that's how to deal with unforeseen circumstances. And there are so many things. Danielle and I were talking about this earlier, and how there's so many things that disrupt our homeschooling. It could be illness. It could be, just a short stint of illnesses, the flu making its way through your family. It could be chronic illness that you have to deal with day in and day out. It could be a move. It could be having a new baby. It could be having a mother or father-in-law or grandparent or somebody move in with you that you now have to care for. There are so many things that can derail us. And so I want to talk about how to handle some of those things. And Danielle, I would love for you to talk a little bit, tell us a little bit about your family in the sense of this, because I know that there have been some really difficult things that your family has dealt with, but you and your husband you've stayed the course. You have been faithful to what God has called you to do, even through the really, really hard times. And you have trusted him for the outcome. So talk with us a little bit about kind of your story.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to make the point before I forget that we have to always remember that at the heart of our homeschooling needs to be relationships. So first of all is the relationship that we have to the Lord and that our children have to the Lord. And then secondly is our interpersonal family relationships. And I think that if you really keep the main thing, and focus on the fact that the relationships have to be the priority, everything else kind of falls into place. So we have dealt with chronic illness in our family for just about our entire marriage. My husband got sick with Lyme disease. It was about 2 years after we were married. And so that's always been a struggle in our family. I'm thankful that he works from home and works in IT, which is something he could do in his sleep. I don't know how, but God's just really gifted him in that area. And so that's been a blessing that he could be home. And of course, me being the homeschooling mom, it didn't really affect our homeschooling all that much, really. It affected our family in the sense that we just really did not do a lot of family things, and still don't. Going out to the grocery store is like a family event. If my husband goes, and my daughter will be like, oh, I want to go. And so I think just cherishing those things too is important. One thing we have always done is had family movie night, and that's almost sacred to my children. Like, we can't do anything outside the home on family movie night because that just doesn't happen. So it's special time as with our family that the kids really treasure. So I think it's important to have those types of things. But recently, really, it was a steady decline for both my children. But first, we noticed in my daughter, she would complain about not sleeping very well. And this went on for a number of years. But, sometimes you just don't really know how to help your kids. It's like, well, take more calcium and magnesium and do this and that. And, it was just hard to figure out what was going on. And eventually, through a series of circumstances, the Lord led me to do a little more research. She really had like a crash. I enrolled her in this camp and she's like, I just don't think I can do it. I'm like, well, just try to go for one day because we paid for it. And by the end of the day, I literally almost had to carry her out to the car. She was just so exhausted. And I'm like, Lord, what do I do? And so we got home and he just really led me to, I don't even know why, but to research adrenal fatigue. And it turned out she checked off all of the boxes for adrenal fatigue. And so she's been struggling with that, that we knew of for the past, probably it was it a year ago? Something like that. And of course it had been going on for a number of years, just getting progressively worse. So she's been struggling with this for probably going on a year now that we knew about. But it's been much longer. And she just, thinking is just really, really hard for her right now. Reading, huge challenge, even audiobooks. But she does a ton of artwork. And you've seen her art. And,
Amazing.
Just the things that the Lord is teaching her through this. And, I just want to say something here too. It's okay if your kids get behind. Okay. Like maybe she won't graduate on time, but what is that? That's something that is imposed on us. And so again, we just have to protect our children. And if they can't do something, we have to protect their health. If I force her to do things that she literally cannot do, the stress level goes up, the cortisol levels increase, and it's just this cycle. And she will literally have an adrenal burnout. And again, this is her health we're talking about. Yeah. And what is more important? We have to protect our children. So it's okay if they get behind. Yes. There is no behind in homeschooling. I just want to stress that. And, she does the things that she can do, and we're okay with that.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you're also talking about a girl who, she does well in her state testing. The girl has written a book. I mean, she literally
wrote a book. Yes.
Authored a book.
She started at age 9.
Yeah. Which is incredible.
So, if you think of it in that sense, she was ahead.
Right.
And now, she's not as ahead.
Right.
And she'll catch up.
Sure.
Because, that mental capacity, it's still there. Once she heals, she's going to skyrocket ahead to where she was. And I truly believe that. And so it does not stress me. We just can't let it stress us. We have to protect our children and their health. So my son recently, it's just, you never expect to deal with these kinds of issues in your kids, but he was sleeping more and more. And, I'm thinking, well, he's a teenage boy, he's growing. And, but then it was like all day long, he's sleeping and he's missing meals. So I'm like, something is wrong. And praise the Lord, he led us to a wonderful natural doctor who's been helping both my kids now and my husband. But she did testing on him and his cells were not taking in nutrition. Like he's really bad off. And so he's graduated. And so that's not, we don't have that pressure, but it's hard for a young 18-year-old guy who really wants to just jump into his IT career and really start doing life to be slowed down. But again, I just see the lessons that the Lord is teaching him through this, and that he has to be patient and wait on the Lord and just learn to trust in him, because my son is a planner. When he was young, I mean, you can imagine two people like me and my son. I'm total, not planner at all. And my son is super scheduled. So every night when I would tuck him in from like 3, 4, 5 years old, he's like, okay, what are we doing tomorrow? What's the schedule? And it used to drive me crazy. I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out tomorrow. And so this has been good for him because he said, I had learned to kind of let go of all the details, but I still wanted God to kind of give me this general direction of where I'm headed. And now the Lord is just saying, nope, you just got to trust me completely. Yeah. And you don't know what tomorrow brings, and you don't know how you're going to feel, and you just have to trust me.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey for both of them.
Yeah, it has. And I want to just put this disclaimer in there for you, in that you are one of the most healthy people I know in regards to how you prepare food for your family. And so you talked about his cells not being able to take in nutrients. It's not because of lack of them. It's not that you're not providing those for him. Yeah. It's just that his body is going through something difficult right now, and you're helping to try to figure out how to help him overcome that.
Right. And it's just a testament that no matter how healthy you try to be, sometimes we can't do everything perfectly in this fallen world, no matter how hard we try.
Oh,
we
sure.
Have to trust in the Lord.
We all know people who eat donuts and drink Pepsi all day long, and they're like the healthiest people we know.
I know. Or seem to be anyway.
Right. So, hey, let's take a quick break and we'll come back in a minute.
Okay.
We are back with Danielle Papageorgiou. We were talking about how to deal with unforeseen circumstances in our lives. And she's talking about how her family has dealt with some just different chronic illnesses. And, we often, as homeschool parents, come face to face with things that are just hard, whether it's a move or the loss of a job or a new baby. So in this last half, Danielle, I would love for you to really just offer some encouragement to parents who are dealing with that, who are on that side of it. And they're just like, I don't know what to do. I'm ready to put my kids back in school, not because they think that's the best option for them, but because they feel like their whole life is just unraveling and their foundation has been shaken up so badly that they don't know what to do. They don't know what to cling to. So can you offer some advice and just hope and encouragement for those parents?
Yeah, well, there's so many things that you can do. Again, I think it's more the way you look at things and your perspective. We have to, first of all, like I've been saying, we have to have that perspective really of an eternal perspective and what is truly most important. When your kids graduate someday, who is it that you want them to be? Not necessarily what is it you want them to learn. That's important, but who is it that you want them to be? Because character has to come first. And so how can you get them from point A to point B to be that person that you want them to be? And I believe that God has equipped every parent to be the best person to instill that character and training into their child to help them develop into who God wants them to be. And then just I would say from a practical standpoint, and this idea of learning to change your perspective, it's great and this is another resource that I have, is a Lifeschooling Vision Planner. And one of the things in there that I really love is sort of this backwards method of planning. It's going through your day after the fact and writing down in all the different subject areas and categories what your child learned that day and what they did, because it's very surprising when you start to document those things. There's a lot of academics that happens just in your day-to-day routine and going about life. It's always surprising to me when my children will throw out all these science facts and I'm like, where did you learn that? And they're like, oh, Jonathan Park. I don't know if you're familiar with that series, but yeah, they grew up on that. And we have all of the CDs and they listened to those and absorbed it.
Yeah.
And they recall that stuff later. And so I think, audiobooks are excellent because it stimulates the imagination. You can pop them in anytime. If you've just had a baby, just Give your kids audiobooks. Give them lots of
Yeah.
audiobooks and lots of real books too, because they're going to absorb all of that stuff, and they don't need you hovering over them all the time to instill the information into them. We feel like we have to spoon feed our kids,
Right.
and they're natural learners. We just have to encourage that. Encourage that natural learning and finding that spark and what excites them and letting them run with it and learn all about that. Because again, more academics come in to those different things they're interested in. You'll find that they'll, just all the different subject areas, how they naturally come in when they find something that they really love to do.
Yeah.
So, from a practical standpoint, that's one thing that we've really found beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just, we've talked a lot about this already, is just trusting the Lord, allowing him to lead you, to lead your families. When we read James chapter 1, it talks about asking for wisdom. And it says, if you ask for wisdom, the Lord will give it to you.
Right.
And I think oftentimes we forget that. We forget to ask, Lord, what do you want me to do with this? How do you want me to proceed? How do you want us to move forward with this child who maybe they're struggling with an illness, or, again, maybe we've just had a big move and my child is having a really, really difficult time adjusting. In those times, it's okay to step back and to say, you know what? We just moved. We have some good friends who are just going through a move right now, and they've got 6 kids.
Oh, wow.
That's a huge, huge deal. And not all of their kids are going to handle it well. And so, you know what? It's okay to just step back, take a break, and just say, you know what? This is one of the reasons why we homeschool, because we have the freedom to be able to do what works best for our family. And in situations like that, they're still learning. Like you said, they're learning now how to organize a home. How do you move into a new home? How do you lay everything out? How do you put everything away and figure out where things are going to go in the kitchen and in the bathroom, and you decorate the walls? I mean, there are so many life lessons. And that's why I love so much your ministry, Danielle, because it's all about life schooling. And we really, I've said this on the podcast many times before. We are raising adults. We are not raising children. We are raising them to become functional, responsible, Jesus-loving adults. It's not about the academics. The academics are fantastic. They're important because those are what point them to Jesus. But we're really raising our kids to be able to go out into the world and function and have some sort of an impact in God's kingdom. That's what it's all about. It's not about, did they become valedictorian and get to give an amazing speech in front of 5,000 people at the end of the year? Who really cares about that stuff? Honestly, when they come face to face with their Savior, he's not going to say, well, how was that speech you gave? He's going to say, what did you do with the talents and abilities and gifts and the hardships that I put before you? And, we realize over and over again, we are so incapable of doing the things that God has called us to do without him. And when we get to accomplish it, then he gets all the glory for it. And so it ends up being such a beautiful thing.
And that's one of the things that really has always kind of bothered me, because our culture does put such an emphasis on academics and intelligence and all of these things. And as Christians, that's just not what we should be doing. It's okay, to learn a lot and to use those gifts if you're academically inclined. I think that's wonderful. But we have to be careful as parents that we don't let that go to our heads and get prideful about, valedictorian and all these things, because really in eternity, that's not what really matters. No. And God really doesn't care about that. He cares about what we do with the gifts and the talents that he gives us and how we give glory to him.
Right. And he wants us to do our best. We always tell our kids, work as unto the Lord. Everything we do, we should do for his glory. And so we should always do our best. But, you talked earlier actually about some kids are inclined to learn chemistry and physiology and but not every kid is. Some are created to be historians. Some are created to be scientists. Some are created to be mathematicians. Some are created to be moms. Some are created to be pastors and truck drivers. And, I mean, there are a million, business owners. There are a million different things that God can use us for. So we have the opportunity to be able to foster that in our kids and encourage them in the way that God created them, even through the hardships and bumps that are thrown at us through life. So we are out of time for the podcast, but Danielle, I appreciate you so much. I love your heart for families. I love your heart for homeschooling, and I am so grateful that you took the time to sit and chat with me today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Yvette. You know, I love you guys too.
Thank you. Where can people find out? Yeah, where can people find out a little bit more about you?
Well, you can go to lifeschoolingconference.com, and I'm actually rebranding, so lifeisalifeschooler.com will also take you there.
Okay.
And we've got a blog and lots of information on there and encouragement. So,
okay, sounds great. Well, thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your week, and we will see you back next week. Bye.
Bye.